Well, welcome back to Bible in the Barn. Glad you stopped by again today. Last week we started a series out of the book of Judges in chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, where Joshua had died and Israel goes to God and says, we have to finish conquering this land, and what do we do? How do we do it? Well, thank God they had the wisdom to inquire of God, and God said, send Judah up. And let him go first. And so they said to Judah, you go first. And Judah was okay with that. He was ready to go. But then Judah decides he wants to ask Simeon, right? So he has the faith to obey God, but only partially, okay? God didn't mention Simeon. God didn't mention anybody else. God gave the instruction to the tribe of Judah. So now, last week we talked about flawed faith. He had faith, but it was flawed. Flawed faith always responds with fear. Okay? He got fearful and he said, okay, I'm going to go. But just in case, I'm going to take an insurance policy. I'm going to take Simeon with me, just in case. And they get to the valley. And when they get to the valley, there were chariots of iron there. And things begin to change. And the bottom line was, they left some of the Canaanites in the land, and that would prove to be detrimental to the future conquest of Israel in the land of Canaan. So, flawed faith responds in fear. Here's the second thing I want us to look at. Flawed faith is delayed failure. That's all it is. It's delayed failure. Sooner or later, you're going to have to face what God said versus what you did. Okay? The way God said to handle it versus the way you really handled it. So let's talk about flawed faith. Flawed faith looks like pure faith in the beginning. Okay? It looks like, man, they've done it. They've started out. This is great. This faith is wonderful. And but I've got an old saying that I borrowed from time. It's called time will tell. You know, we can start out well, but time will tell. Time will tell how it's going to end up. And so as the story goes on, as the conquest of Canaan progresses forward, we're going to see some things that flawed faith has done that's going to really hinder what God could have done. Because here's what we know. Real faith is determined by the finish. I've often said, we don't know who's what yet. I pastor what I believe is the greatest church in the world. I love them. They love me. We're family. But time will tell what I've done there is fruitful. Because I'm always aware that you can take something in the beginning that's great and you can sabotage it in the end, right? And so sooner or later, flawed faith is going to fail. It's just delayed failure is all it is. Real faith is determined at the finish. Judah had a flashy start, but what are they going to do at the finish? Flawed faith looks like victory. I mean, man, it looks just like victory. It looks like, hey, we're going to do this. It's going to happen. We're going to be victorious. And all this is just going to be a wonderful, marvelous thing. But here's the thing. I don't want you to look today at the devils you've conquered. I want you to think about the devils you've left. And we'll talk some more about this in the future. But you started out well. But you come to the valley where the chariots were, and you felt intimidated, and you said, you know what, I'm going to go around the valley. I've conquered from coast to coast, but this one spot in the valley, I'm going to kind of go around that spot in the valley, and I'll deal with it later. Don't worry. I'm not scared. All right? I'll deal with it later, but right now, I'm not going to deal with it. Even though I brought Simeon, my insurance policy, with me, I still don't think that I'm ready to do that right now. And you know what? Flawed faith looks like victory, but here's the thing. Every unconquered enemy becomes a mine in your battlefield. It's still there. Maybe it's hidden. Maybe it doesn't come out very often. But if you keep fighting on that battlefield of life that you're on, sooner or later, you're going to step on that enemy. And it's going to be painful. It's going to set you back. It's going to injure you. It could take you out completely. Because undealt with enemies are just mines in the battlefield. You see soldiers all the time that they lose limbs or they lose their life because they stepped on a mine in the battlefield or something was sabotaged out there and they stepped on it and it brought great destruction or even death to their lives. But sooner or later, if we disobey and our faith is flawed, it's just delayed failure. It doesn't mean we can't get back up. It doesn't mean we can't heal back up and go on again. But it does mean in that battle we'll have a failure because we didn't completely obey and trust God and do what He said do. So here's the 3 thoughts I'm going to leave with you today. Number 1, follow God's instructions. Okay? That's the obedience side of it. If God says, I want you to start this ministry, don't start looking for people to help you or at least partner with you. You have to start it yourself. Maybe God will allow some people to come in, but you can't go to me. When people come to me and say, hey, I feel like we need to, if they came to me and said, I feel like we need to start a soup kitchen, I would say to them, you know what? Get some soup recipes and start making soup. And you do it, and we'll come in and support you, okay? Because God has put this on your heart, not my heart. It's going to be successful if you take it because your faith is going to see it through. Here's the second thing. Common sense will become your conqueror. Don't trust your common sense. Trust me on this. Don't trust your common sense. Because when you start trying to figure it out, and you start trying to reason with it, then you're going to miss the faith it's going to take to see God do a great miracle in and through your life. And here's the other thing. Anything other than pure faith is delayed failure. It'll catch up with you sooner or later. So you have a lot of enemies to conquer. You have a lot of territory to take. Okay? So you do it the way God said do it. Have faith in that. When your faith is tested, you push through that and you continue to conquer. You may seem like you're by yourself, but you're not by yourself. The whole host of heaven is behind you. God with you is a majority every time. So we're going to talk about conquering enemies and living in fear. Thank you for stopping by Bible in the Barn. God bless you. We love you. And we'll see you next week to continue this thought of freedom and fighting for our freedom. Goodbye.